Good morning, class 11s. I hope you've watched the earlier video and have read the text for Karl Marx as well, because if you read first, it will be easier for you to connect the dots. Okay, and so sorry for being lost. I was just caught up with some things. So today we will read Class Struggle, which is like a very important concept of Karl Marx. Like the the theory of Karl Marx is considered to be the theory of class struggle. Okay, class struggle is very important concept of Karl Marx. And when you say class, so in every society, okay, from the historical times there has been different classes. Like in the slave society there has been the free man who employed the slaves, and there has been the slaves. And then in the guild system, the feudal system, there has been the guild, the serfs and the lords. Okay, so in every society, in every point in history, there has been different classes. Okay, and one class is the dominant one, and one class is dominated by the dominant class. So let's start. The most important method of classifying people, according to Marx, is with reference to the production process. So Marx, he classifies each society, the people of each society, depending upon the production process, the way in which the commodities are being produced in certain community. So in each stage in history, like how we studied primitive, feudal, the slave society, primitive communism, capitalism, all of these societies, there are different processes of production. Okay, each society has different processes of production, and depending upon these processes of production, the people of that society, the particular society, particular point of history is classified. That is what Karl Marx is saying. So he says people occupying the same position will form a class. So suppose in a capitalist society there are the owners and there are the workers. So these owners, they have same status, right? And they own the same things. So they form a class. Whereas the workers who work under the owners who are employed by them, these people, they form a class. So that is how people form a class. How a class is formed, it depends upon their position, their status, and their ownership. Okay, so classes are formed through historical processes and changes in the forces of production and conflict within the existing societies. So he says that classes are formed through historical processes. So slowly, with the emergence of history, or with the change from one kind of society to another, classes are formed, and it depends upon the forces of production. The way or the process of production is very important for the determination or for determining the classes of the society. With the change in the mode of production in different stages, conflict arises, thus resulting in class struggle. So, how we study the different stages like primitive communism, feudalism, slavery, all of these stages, in all of these stages, the mode of production is different. The way things are produced is different. Like how in the primitive communism, there was community ownership of property, there was no individual property. Okay, so if they go and hunt down some animal, everybody will share. Okay, and all of the people will share, so there is no community ownership, there is no something like this is yours and this is mine. Okay, there is no, like, the owners or the slaves or owners or the workers, there is no concept as such. But as society evolves, community ownership is overthrown by individual ownership, and as people begin to own wealth individually, that is when classes are formed. Okay, so then when classes are formed, people, there is the owning class, there is the working class. Okay, the owning class, they own a lot of wealth, the working class, they do not have, and slowly conflict arises, and then there is class struggle. And Marx says that as class struggle takes place, that is how the you know the society changes from primitive communism to slavery to feudalism to capitalism. That is how the different points in history it changes. So Marx was a proponent of class struggle. So he has, as I told you in the beginning, the concept of class struggle is very important for Karl Marx. So that is his most important theory. he states that the history of all existing societies is the history of class struggle. So he says that in all of the societies that has existed in the past and is existing now and will exist, all of them will have a history of class struggle. Everybody will have certain classes where they will fight, like they'll have a conflict which will lead to revolution and an emergence of a new historical society. So each society in history has had particular kinds of conflict between the oppressor and the oppressed. So in every society there is some kind of conflict which arises, and the conflict which arises is basically because of the economic processes, okay, how the production consumption is taking place, how goods are being produced, who is being employed, who are employing, okay, and how much they're being paid, and all of these is very important for determining the, like, in initiating the conflict, okay, between the oppressor and the oppressed. In a capitalist society, the bourgeois means, like, as I told you in the very beginning of studying this Karl Marx, that he talks mainly about capitalist society, okay. So in capitalist society, he there are two classes, there are many classes, but like mainly we focus on two main classes that is named by Karl Marx as the bourgeois, okay. So please remember this is bourgeois, this one, and these people are the owners, the capitalists, the haves, okay. Sorry, that's not question mark, that is a slash. So these people, the bourgeois, are the people who owns the mean mode of production, like all these land, labor, capital, everything is owned by the bourgeois, okay. So these people are also called the haves means the people who has ownership of these means of production. They own all the means of production like land, labor, capital. And the proletariat, this is proletariat, okay. So this proletariat, these are the working class, these are the people who are employed by the bourgeois, the owners, okay, so that they can work under them. And these people, the proletariat, maybe earlier in the period of primitive communism, they may have been like owners of properties and wealth, but they eventually, in the course of time, as like the society passes from one to another, they lose all of these wealth, and eventually in order to survive they begin to sell their labor, okay. They begin to use their physical labor in order to survive and in order to work for the bourgeois. And these bourgeois, okay, these bourgeois is the dominant class, okay. They are the owners. Please remember, the bourgeois are the owners and the proletariat are the working class. And the proletariat, they work under the bourgeois, okay. And the bourgeois is the have nots, and the bourgeois is the haves, okay. Have, these people has, these people own the means of production. And the proletariat, they are called the have nots. They do not own any mean of production, that's why they are called the have nots. So they are the haves and the have nots. If you cannot remember bourgeois and proletariat, remember that just remember haves and have nots, okay. So Marx, he says that class consciousness among the workers leads to class conflict. So what is this class consciousness, okay? So basically these workers, they work for the bourgeois, okay. They work for the bourgeois in order to survive, and they do not really know that they are being dominated, or their labor is being exploited. They work they work for 10 hours and they get paid only for 7 hours. So the extra money that is being produced in the 3 hours is being taken by the bourgeois. So these people are being exploited. They are not being able to own the products they have produced. So these people are being alienated, like we have read about how they are alienated, right? They are being alienated from the means of production. So when these people, the have nots, they become conscious about how they are being treated and about what is happening to them, how they are being exploited. When they become conscious, they form a class, okay. They form a class of owners, and slowly, with this realization of being dominated and exploited, they begin a conflict against the bourgeois. And this Karl Marx here says that once the working class, the have-nots, the proletariat, these are all synonyms for working class, okay? Proletariat, have nots. So when these people realize that they are being dominated, they tend to revolt against the existing system, the system of the bourgeois, and eventually leads to class conflict. And he says that once these people regain consciousness, they will fight against the system, they will overthrow the capitalist, and then the socialism will come about. But it has not come yet in many in most of the places. So such conflicts may lead to the overthrow of the ruling system by the suppressed class, thus bringing about a revolution, like I just said. So according to Marx, economic processes creates contradictions among classes leading to conflict. I mentioned about this as well, that it is the economic processes, that the way in which the consumption production are taking place in the society, that is what determines the different classes in the society. So the presence of ideology is one of the reasons why the relationship between the classes becomes complicated. So ideology means ideas, okay, knowledge. So in a society where there is the working class and the owner class, the haves, so who do you think will develop knowledge, or who do you think will develop ideology? Not the working class, it will obviously be the capitalists, the owners, the bourgeois, who will create ideologies, okay, ideas. So these ideologies are passed down to the society, to the workers, and we tend to believe everything that the system tells us, okay. Suppose there is this some product which says it is cruelty free, it's written cruelty free, so we believe it. It may not be cruelty free, right? So that is how the system manipulates us. They say this product is this and that, this and that, okay, and we then tend to buy it and we believe them, but eventually it does not work on us. So that is how the system, okay, that is how the higher authority influences the different classes. So that is how ideology is passed, because these are dominant people. So the dominant ideology is created by the bourgeois and is passed to the subordinates, and this tends to justify the way of looking at the world and the existing social order. So we tend to believe everything that is told to us by the higher authority. So suppose even in studies a certain syllabus is given to you by the board, so you have to follow that syllabus no matter what, because that is what we've been told by the higher system. Even if you want to bring variations, and there are certain concepts which are more important than things that you are studying right now, no, that will not happen, because the system has told you to study something else or a particular fixed pattern. So the ideology is made by the bourgeois, the higher authority, and is passed down to the society, and we are like blindfoldedly we believe in them. So once the suppressed class gain consciousness, class conflicts arise. So in a capitalist industry, when the working class, the proletariat, they tend to understand that they are being exploited, they are being dominated, they are not being paid properly, they do not have proper working conditions. They tend to fight against the system, and slowly this becomes a revolution and class struggle arises. And when in a capitalist society class struggle arises, that is when the proletariat will overthrow the bourgeois, and socialism will come about. That has been said by Karl Marx. Okay, so thank you, this is it. Please read the text, it's very important.